Hello, Vincent Gonzalez. How are you? My name is Namer Sada, and I will be interviewing you today for the role of a gym business manager. Are you ready?
Yes, I am ready.
Sweet. Glad to hear it. For question number one, would you please share an example of how you helped coach or mentor someone, and what improvements did you see in that person's knowledge or in their skills?
Of course. Okay, so right now I'm currently actually mentoring a kid. His name is Josh, right? He's in 11 or not 11. He's 11 years old and he's in the 6th grade.
Hmm.
And me and Josh, I train him for basketball. So I met Josh through coaching a basketball team, and his parents, he was a super hard worker and everything. So I kind of took him under my wing. He kind of reminded me of myself when I was a kid. He's extremely smart, he's extremely quick on the court. So I saw a lot of potential in him. So I started telling his dad, let me work with him in the morning because he had a few things he could work on. So I started to work with him in the mornings around 6 a.m. He's extremely dedicated to the sport of basketball. So after working with him a little bit, I started to get closer with him. I started to realize like he's a really smart kid in school. And recently he asked me some questions about school and like how I handled my schoolwork. And it was kind of funny to think because like just a couple of years ago I was in his shoes. So I
Yeah.
really kind of just gave him some good life advice, trying to tell him like he needs to prioritize his school, but he still needs to be able to work out and get things done outside of school. So I
Exactly.
think this was one of his struggles, being able to still get up in the morning, get his schoolwork done, and then being able to get another workout in after school, just so he
Hmm.
could be above everyone else in his grade. Because his goal is to be not only on the team, but to be the best player on his team. So I kind of gave him a lot of advice, like you got to get up, you got to work extremely hard. And I think that's just how I'm just mentoring him as just a person. And I think I've really gotten close to this kid just off of doing that type of stuff. Plus, his dad, I see him, his dad goes to the same church as me. So I think that just makes us even closer.
That's awesome to hear. Just a few follow-up questions. When you said you saw things that he could improve, could you elaborate a bit more on that? Like what exact things he could have improved on? And even better, how do you like look for the things that they can do to do better? Is it
Okay.
something that you know how to do that they don't? Or is it a skill that they don't have and you can clearly see that they are lacking in it?
Perfect. So yeah, I coached his team a whole season, like a lot of games with him. And, I could see players like if he's super quick, if he can't shoot as well as the other kids, it's
Mhm.
just stuff like that. So I realized like he's super quick and he could dribble really well and he could finish around the rim. He's good at layups and stuff, but his shooting's a little bit off. So I
Mhm.
realized like if this kid was able to shoot, he could really be something. So a lot of the times in the mornings we just work on a lot of shooting. And of course like layups and still like but most of the training is just all shooting, just working on his mechanics. And personally, as me, my strength is shooting. So that's when it clicked in my mind, like I could really help this kid be something like he could play in college or even further, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. And one more is when you said he was like you as a kid. Do you mean like were you also, into basketball as a kid and also like him, being eager, wanting to be the best, working or playing in a team, stuff like that?
Yeah, I think he was like me a lot because I worked extremely hard as a kid. Like, I think he's starting younger than I did because I didn't really have a mentor growing
Mm.
up. But when I was about 15, 16, that's when I really started working out and realized I have to practice more than everyone else. But yeah, like I said, like I see him, me as a kid, like he's working extremely hard. He does everything, like waking up super early. No kid that's 11 or 12 is waking up at 5:30 in the morning
Yeah,
to go
yeah.
work out. You know what I mean? So that's just something like I'm just extremely proud of this kid, man.
And on the when you said that he woke up at 5:30, working hard, finding time to work out even after and all that stuff. Would you just mind telling me how you would organize, plan, and prioritize your work as a mentor and coach?
Yeah, of course. So usually I've gotten a lot of the stuff I do from higher level players that I've trained.
Yeah.
So there's this person, Andre Woolridge. I train with him. He's played 15 years overseas. He's been in the NBA for 2 years, and I work with him probably about 4 or 5 times a week. So I kind of steal the stuff he gives me because he's played at the level I want to play at, and I'm giving it to these kids that are under me. As that, I mean, that's the smartest
Mhm.
thing to do. I'm getting his drills and I'm giving them to me or to the person below me because they work for me. These drills that
Yeah,
I've done with him have gotten me so much better in the last year and a half that I know they're gonna work with these kids. You know what I'm saying?
exactly. So when you're working with him, are you like analyzing what he's doing? You know, like the different skills he would have, different ways he would do, for example, a situation you would have maybe done differently. He does it in a different way, and that kind of opens your eyes on how to do stuff like that differently.
Yeah, of course. Like everyone's dribbling, shooting, everyone's decision making is going to be different in a
Hmm.
sense. So stuff that maybe works for me might not work for this kid just because we have different ways of shooting. You know what I'm
Hmm.
saying? So it's really just kind of tweaking things and seeing what I think is going to work best. And since I have that shooting ability in me, I feel like most of the stuff I do should work with other kids. And if we practice it, and it's not working for him, that means we got to switch something up. And that's where I start maybe looking online, maybe looking at different players, maybe asking different players like what can I see in these players I could use with him, if that makes sense.
Mm. Have you ever tried asking like other coaches and mentors to see what their ways of teaching are, or are you just solely looking at different players and what they do so you can pass it on to your other people who you mentor?
Yeah, of course. I asked my high school coach a lot. Me and him are very, very close. I asked him how can I be a better leader because I look at him as just amazing leader. His word means a lot to me, and the stuff he says, I
Mm.
generally listen to. So whatever he's telling me about leadership, whatever he's telling me about doing these things, I try to implement them into using them on these kids.
That's great to hear. Would you so mind is share an experience and your willingness to lead or offer an opinion that helped you, your company, or yourself?
Yes. So there was in my job, I work at a gym.
Mhm.
We also teach little kids how to play basketball. It's Bobby Jackson's basketball academy.
Yeah,
And this day, we didn't have any of our lead managers, which they kind of teach the classes. So it was put on me to, lead these kids, get them through these drills, get them through everything they needed to do. So there was a team of three, me plus three others, so four. I had to bring everyone in and, we had to make a plan. And I think that's very important when having leadership. I think you need to have a plan and you need to be able to talk to your team.
mm,
So with this being said, I was very good at organizing this plan and then executing it to the perfection. I want it to be a really good class. So the parents, they keep coming back to us because of course that's how we get paid by their parents.
yeah.
So I made sure to write down, a couple of drills, everything we wanted to do with these kids, execute it, give it to my team, and it fell forward and it went really well.
Mm. I just have a quick question that may be a bit off topic, but do you ever give advice to the children's families on like what they could be doing better? Because I know you mentioned school, and maybe you could have told the child one thing and maybe they didn't do it, something like that, where you have to go to their parents to kind of enforce them to do that, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, of course. I tell the parents all the time, their kids, 1 hour a day with us when there's a group of 8 kids, 8 to 12 kids, it's not enough,
Yeah,
Only so much we could do as coaches for an hour of the day. I try to tell the kids, parents, like, let's try to get them working outside by themselves, even if that's dribbling a basketball for 15 minutes or it's shooting outside for 30 minutes, those 15, 30 minutes stack up over time. And I think every kid should be doing more than just training with a coach for an hour a day, whether let alone like some of them only come 2 or 3 times a week. So, on those other days, they could still be getting better, even if it's for 15 minutes, just dribbling a basketball outside their house, because not all kids have parks or hoops. So,
exactly.
sometimes you could just dribble a basketball outside, maybe, do some sprints outside, something like that. I always try to encourage that and just, that's all.
And melding this question into the next of an experience or situation where your patience was tested, either be it with maybe other people at like higher management, that you spoke about, or the child maybe didn't listen, or the parent didn't want to listen either.
Yeah, of course. That happens a lot. Sometimes the parents might think their kids are maybe a little bit better than we see them as coaches. So
Mm,
like I said, I coached a team myself. And sometimes the kid might not be playing as much as the parent thinks. And
mm,
that's always comes a time when the parent comes up to the coach and says, you know, I think my kid should be playing more. Why isn't he playing? They might come off as aggressive, but as a coach, I have to understand like if that was my kid, I might be feeling the same way, what I mean? Because every parent sees their kid as better than the next kid. That's just how parents operate. Me seeing that, I try to be calm, don't take anything to heart. Because of course the parent's gonna be mad. And I kind of just tell them like, this is what I'm seeing. I think your kid could work on this, and if you want extra help with that, I can help you with that. But for right now, this is what I'm seeing, and I think that he needs to work on that. And until I see improvement, I can't really put him in the game. And that's just what I have to say, like it might sound mean at the time, but some of the parents, they take it good, and they start working with me, and they're like, okay, yeah, let's work on this. And so then when they go to their high school teams or their elementary school teams, they're above all the other kids because I've had them work on their weaknesses, if that
mm.
makes sense.
Yeah. And you said how some would take it good and they would offer to help and make their children do, for example, you tell them to dribble outside. Well, for an example, is there like a situation that happened when they just did not listen at all and where they had the child basically not play because they weren't good enough?
Yeah, that happens a lot. No, I wouldn't say a lot, but that's happened to me maybe once or twice where the parent, they think they're just so sold on the fact that their kids should be playing. And
Mm,
sometimes, they just drop off the team. They just stop coming. And, that's just part of a business. My team's a business. That's my business revenue. And sometimes, they have to pay money for their kid to play. And if they're not playing, and that happens sometimes, and kids get cut off teams.
yeah,
And I think it's something where, like, personally, I have a man to man or a man to woman talk with their parent, and it's just okay, that's okay. If you need any recommendations for another team, because I have connections with other teams,
exactly.
then I think you should go play for that team. And that's okay. I want what's best for the kid. And if I think that's best for the kid for them to play for maybe a lower level team, that's okay
Mm,
with me. Because then I know the kid's still playing basketball and could still live up to his dreams. And that's
yeah.
really all that matters with me.
And all this talking, it leads me to wonder, how do you manage your time? And what are the difficulties, the challenges, and most importantly, the results of you managing your time well?
Yeah, of course. So I manage my time very, very strictly. So a lot of times, especially in the summers, I take classes in the summer and I have basketball practice and I work.
Mm,
So if say a typical day for me is working 9 to 4:30, 9 to 5, which was our basketball camps, I would get up, work out before 9, so around 6, get my workouts in, and then I would go to work. And then during my lunch breaks, I would do homework. And then after work, I would work out again, get my schoolwork done, and then go to sleep before maybe 10, 11. So it's really just about having a set time for everything. So like I
mm,
said, my set time for schoolwork was that hour a day during my lunch, and that's when I would do my schoolwork. If I had more, I would do it before I go to sleep. My
mm,
workouts time were before work and after work. So
mm.
I'm really compacting everything into one. So my days are sometimes 14, 15-hour days, but that's just what I signed up for as a student athlete and someone who wants to
Exactly.
play still.
And you mentioned the basketball camps, the kid camps. Could you just elaborate on that a bit further?
Yeah, so these basketball camps are just full of kids from anywhere the age from I would say 5 to about 13, 14 years old. And
Mm,
we just, we do drills with these kids. We try to improve their games. And that's about it. We have a couple coaches at a time. So it's kind of like a class for basketball, if that makes sense.
okay, yeah, that makes sense. And how would you identify different strengths and weaknesses on certain kids? And what would be the solutions or alternative solutions to the problems that they faced? And most importantly, would be what was the impact, if any?
Yeah. So a lot of the times with these kids, we put them through drills, and if I see a kid struggling with the drill, I kind of pull him aside and try to give him, examples of what he could do better, techniques. Because I think it's important for as a coach not to call out the kid in front of everyone. I think it's important to, pull him to the side and tell him like, I think you could do this better, this and
Mm,
that, and then let him try it instead of calling him out in front of everyone and making him do it in front of everyone. I think that's important because at that age, a lot of kids might get embarrassed of getting called out. They might not think they're good enough, and I think that's a part of me being a player and having that mental ability. I know how it is being a player mentally and how that could affect you. I
mm,
think it's important as a coach to be able to see these things and execute them into play without embarrassing the kid or giving a kid something sad, something to be sad about.
mm. You mentioned that you're a student athlete. Would it be basketball?
Yep, I
Yeah.
play for the team at American River College as of right now,
Hmm.
and it's going very well so far.
And what would you do if you have different games that are maybe out of town and you have to travel away for away games?
Yeah, so these are when it gets really difficult, because a lot of times we're traveling 3 out of the 7 days of the week. So
Mm,
at this point, it's where I have to get ahead in school. So a lot of times when I have something to do Friday, I have to get it done. If we're traveling Tuesday, I got to get it done all Monday. A lot of times I'm able to time manage because our games are so far. I'm able to do work on the bus, I'm driving to the game,
mm.
after the game, at the hotel, wherever we're at. It's really just about being ahead and having these times where you're like, I have to get my schoolwork done now and executing that.
All right. I think that'll wrap up the interview. Thank you, Vincent.
Yep. Thank you so much for having me. Have a great
Of
day.
course, you too.